And this was actually recommended by a long-time listener, Benjamin Bishop.
The double B.
Yeah.
The Benjamin Button. He's Asian backwards.
You literally did exactly right. Jesus Christ.
It's going to be a long one.
I knew you were going to laugh.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
He desperately needs her to survive.
It sort of handled some incredibly delicate topics incredibly well.
I will never watch this again. What was that?
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar.
I'm James Smith.
Let me just go and change my shirt.
All right. Hello and welcome back to Off Radar. My name is James Smith and I'm joined by James Eatock.
Hello.
Just had a sip of
Coke Zero.
Coke Zero, there you go. And Neil Brock.
Hello.
Who we call Nige.
Also hello.
Yeah, so welcome back to the pod. If you haven't listened before, this is how it works. We have watched a film that either you guys have watched or that we have that you guys have picked or we have picked. We've gone away and watched it. Now we're going to talk about it and review it at the end out of 10. So this film was actually recommended by a long-time listener, Benjamin Bishop.
The double B.
The double B. And the film is called The One I Love. It was made in 2014.
Classic, yeah.
Had you guys seen this film before we went away to do the pod?
I've seen this film, yeah. It was recommended to me a couple of years ago. I think it was during kind of lockdown. And I thought, oh yeah, just check it out, random film. Didn't know anything about it. And, well, yeah, I'll get to talk about it during this podcast.
And that is the idea. Eatock, had you seen this film?
I had not seen this film, James Smith. Yeah, so this was new to me.
Yeah, good. And no, so, well, yeah, I got recommended this by a friend, and then weirdly, another friend, Ben, recommended for us to watch. So yeah, I've seen it fairly recently. Well, first of all, it's worth saying that this is a Duplass brothers produced film. So they, Jay and Mark Duplass are the executive producers, and they've produced a few quite indie films. And a few years ago, I had seen one of their other films, Safety Not Guaranteed.
Guaranteed, yeah, it's decent.
It was decent, very, very different. And I haven't seen any of their others, but they've done quite a few. And I'd say this is probably one of their biggest, probably with biggest stars like Elisabeth Moss. It's directed by Charlie McDowell. It's written by Justin Ladder.
Just to jump in on Charlie McDowell, his parents are Malcolm McDowell and Mary Steenenberg,
really?
And his stepdad is Ted Danson.
No way.
What? Wait, hang on a
Appears in
second.
this film, and obviously Mary Steenenberg's obviously commonly known for being Ted Danson's current wife, and she's in this as like a voice on the telephone at some points. But yeah, so he kind of got his break in making this film because obviously his parents are all mega famous. So that's not to take anything away from his directorial ability, but obviously it's quite handy when you can say, "Oh, Mum and Dad, do you want to be in a film?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, okay, my stepdad's Ted Danson." So there you go.
Wow, so I didn't even know Malcolm McDowell was married to Mary
No,
Steenenberg.
neither did I.
Wow.
No, neither did I.
know
Before I started researching this.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's a bit of a mind blown kind of
That is,
moment when I
yeah.
found all that stuff out. So
But you said it was, sorry Smith, you said it was written by a guy called Justin Ladder.
It was, yeah.
That just sounds like a funny name. Sorry,
I
Justin Ladder. If you're listening, Justin Ladder.
I
Sorry.
had to look it up, but it's true. That's his name. And it stars, and it's good, this episode, because it is one of these episodes where I don't have to like read a really long cast and crew. It stars Elisabeth Moss, who most of you will know, but she's kind of come from very much a TV background, I would say, with Mad Men, Handmaid's Tale, and then recently she was in an Apple TV show called Shining Girls, and then film-wise she's in The Invisible Man remake, Us, The French
Get him
Dispatch.
to the Greek. Get him to the Greek. That was the first film that was the first thing I ever saw, and I think me and Etok went to the cinema to watch.
Yeah, we saw that together at the cinema on a date. I mean, when we went to cinema innocently together to go and see it, I did not know she was in there.
She's the girlfriend of
Judd Trump.
Job.
We need to edit this.
That's famous snooker
horrific.
Wait, what's his name? Hang on. This is ridiculous.
You know who it is.
We all know who it is.
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill.
So he's the girlfriend. And it's like him, Russell Brand, and Elisabeth Moss. They kind of get in the bed together, and it's like a really
I
sexy
forgot she
scene.
was in that movie.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was the first thing I ever saw him, because I've never actually watched Mad Men. So like,
Oh, it's a great show.
I've heard it's fantastic. But Handmaid's Tale, I'm very familiar with. And yeah, so when I saw she was in this, I was it's a good cast kind of thing. Someone who can definitely act.
She's a very good actor, and she's becoming a Hollywood draw, I would say, in the last few years. And then it also stars Mark Duplass, who obviously produced it. He's also in Safety Not Guaranteed and a few of the other kind of indie films that he's been in. And then I guess supporting, like you mentioned, Ted Danson kind of pops up as well, as the therapist, whose career has kind of been rejuvenated, I guess, since Curb and The Good Place and these.
The Good Place, definitely.
Yeah, these kind of films. It seems to be popping up every now and again in this character.
Well, I always remember. Yeah, no, it's true. That's actually one of the things when I was watching this film. I thought, is he playing the same character from The Good Place?
Yeah.
Like, because also, not to spoil the film, but something mysterious kind of happens to him as well, and it's just like, well, it's a man with a mysterious background. That's the best way to put it. Just like the guy from The Good Place. So yeah, very, very weird. Yeah, he's been typecast. What's it? Yeah. Isn't he in Nige? Is he in like? No, it's not Community. I'm sure he's in another show besides The Good Place.
Well, he did a few things. Did like Damages, which was like sort of noughties, 2010s, which was really good and had a really strong cast. And he did a bunch of TV. Obviously, loads of people know him from Cheers and things like that. Initially, had a run in sort of 90s films. I remember
Getting Even with Dad with
things
Macaulay
like that. Did a one with Whoopi Goldberg. I vaguely recall, like something to do with America. But anyway, yeah, his sort of career. He's the kind of person that kind of everyone knows. Well, like Cheers, everyone knows your name. Ted Danson,
nice.
He's a sign of. I think, like you said, in Curb, it's kind of rejuvenated his career, sort of brought him back to the forefront, and he's just like, if you see him pop up in something, it's just like, oh, great, like Ted Danson.
Yeah.
He was in a really cool show a few years back, actually, called Bored to Death, that I really enjoyed, but I think it only had like a couple of seasons. Had Jason Schwartzman and Zach Galifianakis in, and it's one of those shows that I think disappeared quite quickly. But if you happen to catch that, honestly, it's a really good watch, really enjoyable. It's kind of like that sort of 1950s style detective type thing mixed with modern day, and obviously with Galifianakis in it, it's going to be a bit bonkers. And Ted Danson, I think, again, plays a very similar sort of character in the sense of quite mysterious. I think he's a bit of a stoner in this as well. And it's just, you just kind of know you're going to get called at Ted Danson. He's always cool. He's never playing like the down and out or the weird. It's always just like, he's always looking rather smart and debonair. So good old Ted.
So since we're just kind of like dipping our toes in here, I think maybe we shouldn't spend too much time in there the first go around.
Okay. How's 15 minutes sound?
Yeah, I think that's good. Hello? Whoa, fascinating.
Tell me. Do you understand how insane you sound right now? It's so weird,
It's
isn't it?
really odd.
The film starts with Ethan, played by Mark Duplass, and Sophie, played by Elisabeth Moss, and you see them running and jumping in a swimming pool, and basically what they're doing is they're recounting the moment they first met when they did something similar where they've just left the party. And you can see at this point when they're recounting it, they're trying to kind of like rekindle that beautiful moment where they first met, and it is a really nice opening scene. And as he's telling the story of this, you kind of quickly realise that he's not just doing a kind of normal voiceover or narration, he's actually talking to a therapist played by Ted Danson. And then the story itself centres around these two who are obviously having these relationship difficulties. You know, they've got to a point where they love each other, but they get frustrated with each other, and ultimately they've kind of lost that sparkle. And Ted Danson's character, he suggests they go on this kind of like retreat, and it's in the middle of nowhere in this kind of very beautiful place. And he claims that many couples have come back renewed from this place, I think is the term he says. So once on the retreat, Sophie goes into the guest cottage. She has sex with Ethan. When she returns to the main house, she finds Ethan asleep and he can't remember, so they have this massive row. Ethan then spends the night in the guest cottage and finds Sophie there, and they kind of hook up. And it becomes quite clear that when they go into this cottage that something odd is going on, because the person that they believe is...
The best way to put it is when they each independently go into the cottage, they see their other half, but slightly different to how they know them. Not as in visually, personality-wise.
Yeah, almost so their best version of...
The best version of themselves. When Ethan sees Sophie, she is cooking bacon, and he wakes up to the smell of bacon. He's like, you never cook bacon. That's a key point to this film as well.
That being said, it was one of the weirder fights we've had. Like,
Oh my god, I know.
crazy, right? I mean,
Right?
I still don't fully understand whether you were so drunk and stoned that you thought we had sex, or were you just making a joke and it backfired?
Honestly, I think it was just one of those things. You know?
One of those things. No, I'm asking you, was it that you were drunk and stoned, or was it playing a joke? Because I'm still confused. What happened?
I think the important thing is that, you know, we fought, we made up, we had a nice cuddle, it's a beautiful day.
Sophie, what are you talking about? We had a fight and you stormed out. We didn't make up.
Baby, are you okay?
I'm fine. Are you okay?
Okay, Mr. Hangover, I think it's time for some food. Huh? Let's get something in your stomach.
You're kind of freaking me out a little bit, Sophie. I gotta... Is that bacon?
Yeah.
You hate it when I eat bacon.
I guess if you haven't seen this film, it's gonna have spoilers almost from the beginning, because everything that happens in this film is a bit of a spoiler, because it keeps having little twists and bits. So go away and watch it. But anyway,
you have to watch this film before you listen to us talk about it.
The twist number one is that they realise that in that cottage is like their doppelganger. So there's a Sophie 2 and an Ethan 2. But quite weirdly, only one of them go in at once. So when Ethan goes in, he then meets, like you said, like the perfect version of Sophie, or the perfect version in his eyes of Sophie at that point. So they're cooking bacon. He likes bacon. She's cooking bacon for him.
That's all a man ever wants, is a bit of bacon, clearly.
And then with Ethan's 2, so when Sophie goes in and meets the other Ethan, he's like, not wearing glasses. He's
charming.
Cool hair. Very charming.
Like surf hair. Yeah.
He's doing sit-ups a lot, which is another funny gag. It's the idealized versions of the people they could be. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And when each one, if Ethan goes into the house, Sophie can't enter the house because Ethan's in the house with the other Sophie, and vice versa.
It's actually quite a hard thing to talk about, isn't it?
The house is almost like it's a separate. The best way to put it, and they even kind of talk about it when they first start trying to break it down, is that it's almost like another dimension initially. It's like, oh, if if Ethan goes into the house and sees the other Sophie can't enter the house. They can't be in the same room at the same time.
And it's not just
at least at first.
It's not just like, oh, I'll open the door and walk in. They physically cannot get in there.
Yeah, physically cannot get in the house.
And it kind of they start making like rules, don't they? So it's like, oh, you can go in, but you can't be intimate. And it's like, well, you're cheating on her with me. So, you know, it's, but both of them break these rules.
She seems to be the best way to sum it up is, I love, there's a moment in there right at the beginning when they go, okay, like, because initially they leave the place and they go to a diner and they're sitting in this diner going, you know, let's just pretend it never happened. And then they start thinking, it's like, well, maybe, what if we, you know, maybe we could explore the possibility.
It's like a perfect retreat. Just the two of you. I've sent a lot of couples there, and they've all come back renewed.
Is it another dimension when you go through the door?
You want to go back.
This is something that we've been talking about, creating a new relationship.
I imagine like horseback riding with a little satchel of wine, you know? Not some weird version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
When he comes out, he starts, this is after they've figured out what's going on. He comes out and he says, it's amazing. She thinks she's you. And then he starts speaking to her and they're talking about the rules. And his idea is almost to challenge them. And that's the thing I really liked. He's like, let's see what they know, etc., etc. Whereas Elisabeth Moss's character, Sophie, is trying to enjoy the experience and see what else, you know, what is this? Whereas he's trying to almost like slip them up. And it's a good take on their characters, is that he can't let anything really sit. He needs to analyse and figure out what this is, while she's like, well, let's just enjoy this and see where this goes. And of course, they're both apprehensive about it. But his attitude is to challenge the other person, whereas hers is, I'm going to see what this other person's like. And her first, they agree 15 minutes per session. You go in for 15 minutes, then I go in for 15 minutes. We only have to do 15 minutes at a time. The first time she goes in for 15 minutes, it gets to 20 minutes. And he's like, where are you? And in fairness to him, I kind of found myself like on his side going, yeah, you agree 15 minutes. He goes up to the window. She sees him being massaged by the other heroic, handsome Ethan. She comes storming out. She said, you know, it's all about trust. And he's like, well, yeah, but you were getting a massage. And then they kind of introduce some more rules and etc. But yeah, it's interesting how they both look at this situation. I think that's where the character beats kind of are, or where they initially come from.
I think there's a key element here that we've not actually mentioned yet, and that is they're obviously at a therapist, and part of the reason why they're at the therapist at the beginning is because Ethan has cheated on Sophie, and that's why their relationship is having problems. So from her perspective, if she's presented with a version of him who isn't that cheat, that's a lot more enticing than for him, obviously feeling guilty anyway, and feeling even guiltier because he's potentially cheating again, albeit with a version of her. So you'll find as the film sort of goes on, I would say she's a lot more into it than he is. And as Etok said, part of it's because of it's his general distrust or just trying to analyze things, while she's like, this is how it always should have been. This was how our relationship before we had these problems. And you can kind of see, whilst they're trying to set these rules, she's much more inclined to try and push them, well, as you mentioned, sort of staying in a bit longer, push them to the limits and potentially beyond the limits that he would deem acceptable. So it's really interesting in terms of sort of how they're both approaching the situation, how they're sort of trying to manipulate the situation, manipulate each other, like how they're potentially telling each other about what's happened or maybe what they're not telling each other. So it's a really interesting sort of study of their characters and that kind of situation. I mean, what would you do? It's such a crazy thing. I'd just be it's just impossible to even think how you'd react in that situation.
And I think that's the intention, isn't it, of the writing is to make you question what would you do in that situation, but also what is socially acceptable here, what is your morality, and then it also makes you question, rightly or wrongly, it makes you look at your relationship, and you know the overriding thing with this is, you know, it's kind of saying, you know, that there is no such thing as perfect. There is no perfect relationship. And if there is, then you know, it's not always what it seems, which obviously in this film kind of blows up in a even bigger and slightly different way.
We'll make up some ground rules.
Okay, no spying. We'll be honest with each other about what happens in the house.
It's like an exercise in trust. Sophie? You're kidding me.
There's not a big cast to this film at all. And you've obviously got the two main characters immediately duplicated. So there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of kind of like over-the-shoulder shots. And they've got like the perfect back head kind of not stunt doubles, but doubles for them because of the way they've had to do it. Almost think kind of Peep Showish style in a way, although slightly, I would say it's a bit more polished than that. So, and it's obviously they're potentially playing two of the same characters that are slightly different. So it's those subtleties, be it not wearing a pair of glasses or having your hair tied back. And then the way they come across in terms of perhaps slightly more bubbly or more interesting or more charismatic. As an actor, that must have been incredibly challenging. And one of the things about this film is they really pull it off, I would say. It's, you know, they are two different people as the same person, which is really interesting. It
was really interesting. I was reading about an interview with them today about the relationship and how they kind of played it together. And actually, most of the scenes had a bit of a plot, but a lot of it was improvised. So the kind of naturalism of their relationship and the chemistry is pretty real because they wanted it to be authentic. And like you say, I think the whole film hinges on that. And if their relationship and chemistry is not right, then this film would not work, because I forget that there's only two people in this film. Like when I was going to read the cast, I was going to read another two people because they're that good at playing those little subtleties between the two Sophies or the two Ethans, and you actually get alliances with the different kind of versions throughout this film, which is an incredible testament to how well they acted.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things I really like as well about the film, the way it's filmed, whenever they're in the beach house with their idealised other, it's sunny. The lighting is completely different. It's bolder. It's colourful. When they're in the beach, when they're in the main
house.
But yeah, when they're in the main house, the colour is very desaturated. It's just normal, basically. However, when they're in the house together, because there's a scene, this is like, again, jumping ahead slightly, when Ethan pretends to be cool Ethan. So he times it so that as Sophie enters the house, because this is at the point where he totally doesn't trust her, as Sophie enters the house, he enters through the back door, slightly out of breath, which is my favourite line in the film, when she goes, "Oh, sorry if I come at a bad time." He's like, "No, I was just doing sit-ups," because his charming, better other self is always doing sit-ups. That's kind of, so he's like, "Oh yeah, I was doing sit-ups," takes his glasses off, of course. But the lighting in that scene isn't bright and lovely. It's normal. So I love the way they play with the light throughout the film. It's when it's the idealized version with the real person, as it were, it's a much colourful colour scheme, and then when it's very, very, I found that like a really nice touch. It's not subtle, but it was like, oh
no, it's not, but
subtle
it
enough that I didn't notice.
I think also that lighting and that place, it makes it very claustrophobic for them, but also for us. You know, we're only in like not really one or two locations pretty much for the whole film, so you almost, as the viewer, you feel like you're part of this social experiment. And at times I was thinking to myself, I wonder if Ted Danson's like watching, you know, like Big Brother style, like, you know, is they never really answer that, but, you know, it feels like somewhere that's a very good point. You know, at the beginning he sends, but what is his role in this? And, you know, and that was a question that is unanswered, but yeah.
There's a few clues towards the end of the film, I think, about what's going on, but yeah, because obviously, you know, as we're talking about this film, we're saying, oh yeah, you know, they make these idealized versions, and at that point the plot seems to be, you know, from what we've been led to believe, it's a place where it's a couple's retreat. They go there, they meet the idealized versions of themselves, then leave together, and they're all happy, as in like, oh, we met the idealized version of ourselves, we found ourselves to be what we could be, the potential of what we could be, and then they leave together. That's clearly what this plan is. And then the film takes a little bit of a dark turn, which for me wasn't so much the fact that, you know, Ethan pretends to be super cool Ethan to sleep with Sophie. It's the moment when Ethan sees his phone messages, listens to his answer phone messages overnight, and they're from like his mother, a friend, a work colleague or something, saying, oh yeah, so and presenting him with facts about his life that he already knows, and then he suddenly clocks, oh, hang on a second, my double has been phoning my family and friends. Like, what's he doing? Which I thought was it's a really dark moment, but then you see how Sophie's character is so at this point turning that she's falling for super cool Ethan, because when Ethan comes back, normal Ethan, he comes in, he goes, yeah, like these random phone calls were made, and Sophie's like, oh, so was it a butt dial? And he's like, well, no, because they heard my voice. And she goes, oh, why do you think that was? Clearly we all know why but clearly we know how that has happened. It's the double has made these phone calls, but she's so starting to fall for the double now, this idealized version of her husband, that she's kind of like, oh, I'm sure it's nothing, I'll talk to him. And that's when Ethan swaps places with the good Ethan. But yeah, I love that dark, like it's a real dark moment, because then you think, things aren't always what they seem. They have this argument, they go back in the house, and then they see the doubles not in the guest house anymore, now they're in the main house. So there's all four of them in the same room, and it's like, oh wow, because this wasn't possible up until this point. So now it's like, well, now it's interesting. And I found this part of the film even more interesting, because now you get two different versions of the idealized versions, because we thought, oh, idealized Ethan, what a lovely charming guy. Now he starts becoming a bit of a douchebag. Super lovely Sophie, cute and wonderful, she seems to have an edge to her that isn't so friendly. So that's the moment in the film where I was like, intentions? Now this is good.
Yeah, that's when you start to question, what are their intentions? What are they doing?
Sophie, open the door.
Okay, Ethan.
How do you see this playing out?
I'm not leaving.
This entire weekend has been one planned trap.
Essentially, Ted Danson is almost recruiting these people as through his therapy, through being a therapist, sending them to this retreat, and then essentially replacing them with versions of themselves that he's trained up. And we don't know if they're robots or whether they're real people or what they are. It's not really explained. And I guess going into this film, you think it's probably like a rom-com or something like that, when in fact it's probably more attuned to being like a Twilight Zone episode. Because can you imagine?
Nige, I wrote that was in my final review of this episode.
Same.
Yeah, well, sorry for jumping the gun, Twilight Zone lovers, but yeah, essentially Ted Danson is obviously got some weird scheme going on. Whether or not it's so he can be an amazing therapist and everyone keeps going back to him because everyone sings his praises, because there's loads of like photos and recorded messages of like, oh, Ted Danson saved our marriage kind of thing, and because near towards the end, Ethan breaks into this room essentially that has this computer with basically all the incriminating evidence. So lots of files containing recordings of the therapy sessions, and then recordings of people practicing to mimic their voices and trying to gather all the information that obviously people are completely open in therapist sessions. They're going to tell you a lot about their lives, and that's the way these kind of replacements are learning how to be them. And it's truly spooky, like terrifying that someone could kind of step in for you. And the whole purpose of them being there is to be replaced. And once the relationship between the original couple breaks down to a level where it's basically it can't be salvaged, the replacement couple will take their place and then can leave. We discussed the fact that they couldn't both be in the beach house at the same time with their kind of duplicates or the opposites. That changes in the sense of they'll get locked there and the duplicates can leave. So that's the thing where the kind of the direction it's going in. But even for that, which is complicated enough, there's still another twist, because rather than both being replaced, as we've kind of already discussed, Sophie has fully fallen for the replacement
Ethan too. Yeah.
So now there's a jealousy going on between the replacements and the actual people that have gone there initially, and that maybe a mix of two will leave rather than the two replacements.
And that's, I was going to say, like, you just, I thought one of the scenes that was just so awkward was the dinner party scene. Well, dinner party, you know what I mean? The dinner scene. There's all four of them. And that's where you really get to see super cool Ethan just being a massive dick. It's like, you don't have to be like that, but he knows he's better than the original Ethan. So he's just really kind of, laying it in. And original Sophie is laughing at all of fake Ethan's jokes and even like side gig, but the other Sophie, improved Sophie, new and improved Sophie, you can tell she's really uncomfortable because she knows she's losing her version of Ethan to the original. So it's really interesting. Like Nige said, you get that thing where it's supposed to be one couple in, one couple out, or like one couple in breaks up, other couple out. With this, it's one couple in, but they're going to there's this mix going on. Who's going to come out of this the other side? When Super Sophie, there we go. I'm just coming up with different names every time. Super Sophie says to
wait a minute, which one's Super Sophie? Now I'm confused.
She's the new improved one. So Super Sophie is saying to Sophie 2 is saying to Super Sophie.
Super Sophie 2.
But I'm going to start using numbers. Sophie 2 is saying to Ethan 1, I'm worried now because I'm losing my husband,
Ethan 2,
to your Sophie 1, and it's so
sounds like the football pools or something like that.
Man United 2, Sophie 1.
Sophie 1.
But it gives you a really kind of wonderfully unique story in that sense, because at this point, and then you get this wonderful scene where it becomes obvious that Ethan 2 wants to escape with Sophie 1. It's like, we've fallen in love, we're going to leave together. But then Ethan 1 beautifully declares that, I'm a fuck up. I'm really like to Sophie 1, Ethan 1 and Sophie 1, the original couple. Ethan basically says to her, look, I know I screw up, I'm really sorry, but I do love you. And you see in Sophie's face, oh my goodness, my husband does love me. This is kind of what we came here for. It's that moment. And she's like, they all take a step back from super duper Ethan 2. Ethan 2 makes a run for it because he wants to get out of here. He's like, the only way I can leave is if someone falls in love with me and I become the number one Ethan. So he makes a run for it. Sorry, have I jumped ahead really massively?
No, because throughout that stage, it's a 90-minute film, and as we've kind of said, there's a lot of the actual action, so to speak, of the film is the dialogue, is the building of relationships, is figuring out what's going on, and then there's kind of this crescendo at the end where, as you've kind of said, Ethan 2's rumbled, and he's like, well, balls to this, I'm making a break for it.
Yeah. And basically runs and runs and runs and hits like this magical force field around the well, it's not necessarily a force field, it's the thing that prevents his body from leaving. So he hits the wall, crashes back. He
knocks himself out, and then Ethan 1 comes along, doesn't he?
Yes.
But he's flanked by this is where it gets silly. I'm just going to say he's flanked by 2 Sophies wearing the same clothes because they wanted to try and trick, which they did, Ethan 2 into revealing his actions, which he did, which is why he made a run for it. When he makes a run for it, Ethan 1 chases him down, comes out after him. Ethan 2 hits the invisible wall. Then you get Ethan 1 flanked by 2 Sophies, and he turns to them, and he has to figure out which one is his wife. One of them smiles back at him. Here we go, let's leave. They drive off. They escape, leaving forever.
Well, what's interesting at this point is he's grabbed the Sophie, they get in their car, they drive off. The other Sophie makes no effort to say I'm the Sophie. She's just tending to unconscious Ethan on the floor. So we know the right pair have left, that's fine. But then it cuts to real life.
Morning.
Yeah.
And then what happens, Etop? Did your bacon come back to play?
So the following morning, it's a lovely moment. So, it's a hilarious moment in a way. Following morning, they're clearly... I wasn't sure when watching this, it's like, how much time has passed? Then you find out it's just like the following day, but they're clearly so in love again. It's like, wow, that couple's retreat really worked. That weird experience really worked for them. And, they're all like, they're laughing on the bed, etc. They've clearly had an amazing night, drive home, whatever night together. And she goes, I'm going to cook breakfast. And he's like, oh, what's it going to be? Kind of thing. She goes down the stairs. Then he shouts down. She goes, I think he says, like, what are you making? And she shouts back up, bacon.
Obviously, when I first watched this film, I was like, oh, he's picked the wrong one. But then...
He takes ages as well. He's just like sat there kind of like...
but I thought...
Like rubbing his nose and all sorts.
That's really obvious. I thought, this was coming, right? As soon as he walked away, he's like, oh, okay, he's got the wrong one. And then I thought, Or as our listener pointed out in his review when I chatted to him a little bit about it, he said, well, what if it wasn't the wrong one, but actually the relationship therapy has worked?
Yeah, worked. And she knows he likes bacon, or she's prepared to make him bacon.
And that is the the question that you're left as the listener, as a podcaster, that we can't necessarily answer, but it's great to have a question at the end of the film.
Like every Twilight Zone episode, it's great to have a question at the end.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, you're right. The Twilight Zone.
The end? Quick question. What do you think? The thing I didn't find had been answered, and I might be wrong, and it's not like, are they robots or whatever? Because clearly something else is at play with the, magical force field. It's clear that this becomes almost like a sci-fi fantasy film, to a degree.
Definitely.
Obviously it is, with clones, but what happens to the previous couple, the original couple, as it were? So
Soylent Green.
So they eat people.
Yeah,
Soylent Green is people. No, it's a case of, because my kind of theory when watching it was when Ethan and Sophie end up in the Ethan one and Sophie one. If the plan goes as Ted Danson wants it to, Ethan and Sophie end up somehow in that house unable to leave, right? They end up unable to leave. When the next couple comes to the therapy session, do Ethan and Sophie automatically become the next couple, if that makes sense? I know it sounds weird. I just found like, is there some sort of like spirit world thing going on, or am I overthinking it? Is it as simple as Ted Danson places identical versions every time and then offs the old ones or something?
I probably, again, I think it's one of those questions you'll never get an answer to unless the writer or director comes out and tells us.
Tell us.
And they probably don't know either.
No, it's just a really nice plot device, and the more you think about it, the more you can kind of get twisted up in knots.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with this. You can almost overthink some of those things, and you'll find quite a lot of holes, but you kind of have to take it for the kind of the charm and the sci-fi and the fantasy that it has without trying to explain to yourself about it. I mean, it's good that it makes you question, like at the end, and where did that first couple end up? Where are they now?
Well, there's loads of them.
There's many couples.
No, but there must have been one couple to begin with, right?
Well, true.
So where did it begin? It's like this infinite loop of people.
Maybe we'll get a prequel. We'll get the origin story.
Ted Danson.
They'll do a reboot in a few years. Yeah.
Well, there's scope for it. What's his motive? Was he someone who was there once? I mean, the answers.
Wow, we really are going deep on this.
Now we're writing fanfic. We should probably delete all this.
Is he married?
It only took 15 days to film it, so it's very, very quick. You can kind of, it's quite stylized. It looks really great. There's a lot of good stuff about it, but they did it quickly. And the place that actually shot it, as we said, it's mainly in one location. There's a diner, there's a therapist's office, there's the pool at the beginning, and then it's mainly at this home, the beach hut, and the main house. Ted Danson and Mary Steenburgen's house. So that's where they filmed the whole thing. It's actually their own home. So I thought that was really cool.
Say, one of their houses, probably.
Well, probably one of their houses, but certainly a very nice one. So,
very nice.
So that's really cool. Yeah. But yes, should we get on to the rating?
Let's kick off with what our listener who recommended we watch this film. But first of all, I hadn't heard of this film before he recommended it, even though I'd seen the Safety Not Guaranteed one. But this is what Ben thought. Really original, kept me guessing from start to finish. Being set in a beautiful location really draws you in and then unsettles you more and more as time goes on. I like how they're trapped, but only by their own intrigue. Nice.
Oh, I like that. That's
the end scene.
Can we have Bishop on this?
Yeah, I did say, did you want a voicemail? But he
did. You want to replace him?
Yeah, he did.
I was going to say, when we did the Moonlight one, which I listened to the other day, we had Adrian Stevenson review, one of our listeners, and even during that, I was like, he should be replacing me with his eloquent review.
and Chris Kinnan.
So me and Etok are on the way out, basically. Series 4 is going to be Smith and 2 new
It would just be me and a load of other people. Right, and he goes on to say, the end scene is cool, although it seems like he has come back with the wrong woman, he almost immediately decides, it's fine, he's happier now, so who cares? Worth watching the trailer. All trailers these days show you the whole film in 3 minutes, but this one shows you a lot without giving anything away, which is great.
Oh,
because
nice.
normally
Cool.
That's a talent.
And he also says the music in the film is great too. Yeah, which is a good point. It's got a really good score. It's very
it's kind of simple, isn't it? It's
indie,
not. I wouldn't say
yeah.
it's not incredibly memorable in such a way, but it really suits the film.
It's just perfectly there without exactly being song and dancing,
infringing too much on what's actually happening. So it's kind of the perfect balance.
And Ben gave it a 7.5 out of 10. So yeah, very, very good.
I hate him because he gives half marks, but
don't we all?
I knew Nige was going to mention that. I knew Nige was going to say something.
Nige, I'll come to you.
Yeah, so I hadn't heard of it before it got recommended to me, and it wasn't a film I saw any posters for or remember anything about prior to actually watching it, and it really took me by surprise. I kind of expected it to be like a bland rom-com or maybe like with a slight bit of thriller. The kind of sci-fi element threw me. I used to love like Twilight Zone, Outer Limits type show, so this really appealed to that side. I think it's really simple, whilst, as we've kind of proven during this podcast, a little bit complicated at the same time. But yeah, I love the fact it's like a 90-minute film that so many people could just put on and enjoy in an evening. It's not a huge commitment. It's not one of those things that you're going to be sort of really struggling to get through. The acting is top notch. The script, even though most of it was ad-libbed, works really, really well. You really kind of connect with the characters, sometimes disliking them, sometimes liking them, but just constantly feeling like you're involved. And for that reason, I think I'm actually going to give this film 8 out of 10 because it really was such a surprise and such a pleasant surprise as well. And I would heartily recommend it to anyone who has not seen it.
Nice. E-Talk.
So the music I found a little bit odd. So you might see where my review starts going. I found the film to be frustrating, not because it was like I don't understand the story, but it was like I get it, and I like the fact that after 20 minutes the premise is set up. That was the thing that one of my first notes I wrote down. It's like 20 minutes in, we already understand the premise. But the reason I wrote down Twilight Zone as well as like the ending was that I found my take on it was that this works fine as an episode of the Twilight Zone, as in 30 minutes or whatever, a half-hour TV show. This is great. There's the plot. I feel that this is one of those. I feel like in this day and age you've got to justify everything with this, and this is just my opinion. I feel this is one of those TV. It felt like an episode of Black Mirror as well. It's like, here's a film, we're going to turn it into a movie, and it just felt like a very one-note movie. As much as I did enjoy it, like it's got a very charming cast, it's beautifully shot, it's, as Ben used the right word there, intriguing, but I did find myself just going, oh, I get it, can we get to the next thing? I just found myself getting very frustrated with it. Also, I'm not sure like I say, going back to the music, I'm not sure entirely what the film wants to be. The music at times, there's like a very serious thing almost, or a thriller-esque thing taking place. You've got this music going, and it's like, hang on a second, she's cheating on him or whatever, that kind of thing, or he's cheating on her. And I just found the music just out of place. It was like, are you trying to suggest to me that this scene's funny, or this is supposed to be a comedy, or is it a thriller? So I felt that the film didn't really know what it wanted to be, and I found that's why I found the music a little odd. I'm going to do, as we're going to start calling this, a Nige, and I'm only going to give this like a 4 out of 10.
Wow.
I'd probably recommend this to people, but I would never watch it again. I've got no interest to see this again.
Wow. I'm quite shocked by that because you've spoken about it.
No, like I said,
he's done a Nige.
He's done a twist.
Nige.
There's a doppelganger. Is this real E-Talk?
I don't.
Is this E-Talk too?
It's E-Talk too.
It's super E-Talk.
No, I don't. I'm not saying it's an abysmal movie or anything like that. It's just, something about it, I just felt a disconnect. But I'm gonna say this. I understand people that would give this like a Nige. I understand why he's giving this an 8. I totally get it. But for me, I just was like, I kind of wanted it to be over. I was like,
wow.
Come on, let's just. We know where this is going. Come on. But So I'm not trying to be clever. I'm just saying there's my review.
Wow,
it's fine. Ben's just really disappointed in you. It's fine. So Smith, what to bring us home?
Well, yeah. I mean, It's weird. I really like the feel of the film. I feel there's an excellent pace to it. I think, for me, it was satisfying as a 90-minute film, and I didn't ever feel like I wanted it to end. I felt like it was, it was often very understated, and it felt indie at times. And, I kind of get your point that sometimes it feels like a little bit clever for its own good. And I do kind of take that on board, and I did find that a few times in the film. I was like, okay, like the ending, I felt, although, I kind of saw the ending coming. I thought it was a little bit cliche, but how else are you going to end it? And I still found myself smiling throughout the film. It's not a laughed out loud film, but it's often kind of funny and charming. I think, like many films, the chemistry is so important, and like we've all said, the fact that it's acted so well elevates this film. I think the script is good, but I think when you start digging deeper, you definitely could get into holes of what works and what doesn't. But I think maybe you shouldn't necessarily do that to get enjoyment out of it. Would I watch it again? I probably would. I watched this a little while ago, and I'm quite intrigued to watch it again. I felt like the music was almost forgettable for me, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. Because sometimes, a score should be there, but not necessarily, kind of be remembered. So I didn't find that annoying or frustrating. Saying that, if she wasn't in it, then, who knows what this film would be like. But yeah, I went for a 7. I thought it was an enjoyable film, much better than I thought it was gonna be. I, like Nige, was expecting a bit of a rom-com, so I didn't really know what to expect. And then when the twist happened, I was satisfied, amused, and enjoyed.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To a perfect weekend together.
It was kind of magical.
We also had a fantastic time when we did ecstasy, but we're not going to do that every day of our lives because you die.
Right.
So there we go. We had from James Eatock, we had a 4. We had from myself a 7. We had from Ben Bishop a 7.5, and Nige an 8. And guys, what do you think? Is it worthy of an 8? Is it worthy of a 4? Let us know. Write in. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Let us know what you think and what your rating is of The One I Love, or recommend a film that we might disagree about. It's been a while since we disagreed, actually. It's good.
Nice and refreshing, yeah,
yeah
absolutely.
Yeah.